Hello, and I am back with some chapters of The One and Only Bob. All right, so this is called Early Days. Early days I don't remember much about. My puppy days. It was 3 years ago, but sometimes it feels like 300. Mostly I recall fighting with my sibs for the primo meal spot. Lots of squirming and squeaking. Everything soft and movable, like we were one great big complicated animal. I never met my dad, and my mom didn't say much about him, except that he was trouble. Mom had a beautiful fawn coat, Chihuahua, some this, some that. Nice, messy bloodline. So maybe like a mixed type dog is what Bob's mom was. Mutt's rule. Mom crooned to us. She told us stories and laid down the law. I wonder if she knew she didn't have much time to prepare us for the world. We were born in a dark place, probably under some porch stairs, I suspect, since I remember the sound of boots plodding up and down, the biting and ugly smell of human feet. They called my mom Rio, and they fed her most days, though sometimes she had to fend for herself. She never showed fear towards them or respect. Indifference, I guess you'd say, unless they tried to handle one of us. She growled then, hoping to make it clear that we were hers and hers alone. I got myself picked up a couple times. The hand reached in and grabbed. They were rough and smelled of strange scents, bitter and meaty. My mom's growl made me fearless, and I wriggled and yipped. The hands shoved me back to the warm place where I could sleep and drink and dream in safety. Still, I understood in my simple puppy way that dogs belong to humans, and that was how it would always be. Boss. My mom wasn't much for names. She had a lot of litters. I guess she'd run out of ideas. My brother, First, was Natch, the firstborn. Runt, my youngest brother. So First is the name of one of the dogs, then Runt is the name of the next puppy. My youngest brother was the last. Dot had a little spot on her back, and Yip was always complaining. I was rowdy. Goes without saying. And that left my oldest sister. We all called her Boss. Boss was small but mean, with a distinctive, sharp-sounding bark. She could outmaneuver any of us to the best spot for dining. I admired her grit, even if she did get on my nerves. When we got a bit older, less blind, and more confident, I fought her off occasionally, but mostly Boss won. She was fearless, that pup. Alone. The truck happened without warning one night. They threw us in a box and left my mom behind. I can still hear her frantic howls. I landed in a muddy ditch. It was a cloudy night, nearly freezing. Even the moon had abandoned me, and the smells, everything was wild and unknown. Animals with big jaws and bigger appetites. Birds that swooped to kill. Death and life all mixed up together. I searched for my siblings until the truth became clear. I was utterly alone. Cars. The next morning, I began my slow journey, moving through the tall, wet grass, my limbs stiff from the cold. Now and then, I'd drink from a mud puddle or gnaw on some grass. By evening, I was wobbly with hunger and thirst. I followed the highway every time a four-wheeled creature rode by. So a four-wheeled creature to a dog, think about what he might be talking about, what that four-wheeled creature is. I froze in fear. And yet this is what slays me. I knew that cars meant humans, and humans meant the possibility of living, just as much as they meant the possibility of dying. The owl. Darkness had fallen when it came out of nowhere. The owl. A shadow in a shadow. They don't make a sound, not a sound. It's quite impressive when you think about it. Here's a picture of the owl. Maybe a new friend. Or enemy. Luck is the next chapter. Just as her talons, those marvelous weapons, raked my fur, I caught my right front foot in a small hole and stumbled. If she'd gotten hold of my body, I wouldn't be here, but all she managed to do was grab my tail. Only time in my life I ever regretted my handsome hindquarters. I was airborne, hanging upside down, dizzy and dazed, and just crazy enough to think, I'm actually flying before the terror hit full force. I caught a whiff of other animals below. Later I found out they were pocket gophers. But back then I just knew I was smelling something completely foreign. The owl must have decided gophers would make a more satisfying meal. She let loose her grip and plummeted me to the earth. More luck. Maybe it was my puppy fat, or my soft bones, or my incredible good fortune, but I didn't die. Didn't even break anything. I'd flown twice in my short life and lived to tell the tale. Will. I found a small hollow at the base of a fallen tree, poked my nose in, and got a swat and a hiss from a grouchy raccoon. Keep going, waddling, whimpering, lights ahead, and new strange smells. Keep going, keep going. It amazed me how much the sheer will to not to die can keep you moving. Exit 8. I finally came to a small road curving off the main highway. Exit 8 turned out to be. A big billboard overhead had a picture of a terrifying animal on it. We might know who that terrifying animal is. Of course, I didn't know what a billboard was. I didn't know the scary animal was a gorilla, let alone that he would become my dearest friend. But something told me to follow the off-ramp, and eventually ended up at the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, home of the one and only Ivan. History. I made it to the mall. I slept in dirty hay by some garbage bins. The next night I found the hole in Ivan's cage, and I stole his banana. I slept on his belly, and the rest, as they say, is history. For 2 years I lived in that seedy old place that was part mall, part circus, and all crummy. But that was nothing compared to Ivan. He spent 27 lousy years there. And our dear friend Stella, an old circus elephant, was stuck there for most of her life, too. When Stella passed away, it nearly broke Ivan's heart. I tried like crazy to get him through those dark days, but what really saved him, I think, was Ruby, our baby elephant friend. Before Stella died, Ivan promised her he'd get Ruby out of that awful place. And to my amazement, he actually pulled it off. Ivan and Ruby and a bunch of our other pals ended up going to different places, zoos, sanctuaries, that knew how to take care of them. They were with others of their own kind, and they were loved and well cared for. It's been over a year now since we all moved, and they seem so much happier. Me, I lucked out. My girl, Julia, whose dad had worked at the mall, decided her family needed a dog. Who was to argue? 2 square meals, my own bed, all the belly rubs I could beg for. What dog in his right mind would say no to that? The best part is we don't live far from Ivan and Ruby, and I get to see them all the time. I'm glad they're nearby, and I'm thrilled they've settled in so well. Really, it's a solid solution. But it's not a perfect one. I wonder what he doesn't like about his new home. All right, this is called Tennis Ball. The way I understand things, it's like this. We live on a lonely ball called Earth, and humans have basically been throwing it against the wall for so long that the poor old ball is falling apart. It's like me with a tennis ball, chewing away until it's nothing but pieces of slimy rubber that taste like, well, slimy rubber. And that means there aren't as many places left for wild animals. Seems there are good zoos and bad zoos, and good sanctuaries and bad sanctuaries, just like there are good dog families and bad dog families. The good places are trying to keep wild species healthy and safe. They don't want endangered animals to go away forever. They also don't want the earth to turn into a slimy, dilapidated tennis ball. Although honestly, slimy rubber doesn't taste half bad. You should try it sometime. The thing is, I would give anything to see my dear pal Ivan deep in the jungles of Africa where he was born, or to see Ruby running across the savannah with a herd of elephants, her big old ears flapping in the wind. I'd give up a mile-high pile of bacon cheeseburgers to see that happen. I really would. But it ain't happening. I get that. And so do they. When you're an animal, it helps to be a realist. Okay, and then the next part is it's not chapter 2, but it's part 2. So it seems like Bob's given us a little rundown of what's happened since Ivan told his story, and then now we're going to find out what's happened in Bob's life since then.